Hello, good morning. Any questions if you have from previous class? The screen is blank. एक बार बोलना ITT में किसी को. Screen is blank. Any questions if you have? Have you heard the word spectrum auction? सुना है ये term spectrum auction? Anyone will explain what does that mean? What does this word spectrum auction mean? Yes, go ahead. What exactly government sell? Part of? Don't have to complicate things. Think of licenses. Okay, now we are onto something. Okay, very good. So, yes, all of you are correct. So, basically, think of let's say power sector. Power sector में जो thermal power plants हैं, उनका जो raw material है, that is coal. That you need to find coal. Now, coal we have to mine. But nobody ऐसे कोई random mining शुरू नहीं कर सकता. That I go and start mining, I found a reserve. You cannot do that. That whenever you have explored, you find a mine, government will have right over it, and government will decide that who is going to mine. For that, government often will publish a notice on its website, in newspapers also, that we are going to do some sort of auction. Lot of mining companies will come and bid for it. And जो भी government को लगता है best bid है, based on that, for a certain period of time, let's say for next 50 years or 10 years, for that mine, government is going to give license to that particular company, right? So that will be for power sector. But now think of telecom sector. Telecom sector के लिए जो सबसे important resource है, वो spectrum है, वो radio frequencies हैं. But spectrum is not a physical object per se. Radio frequency is not a physical object. Radio frequency you literally produce with help of a device. For example, my mobile phone produces a radio frequency. That Wi-Fi router somewhere produces a radio frequency. So I can design a device which can produce radio frequency, and that radio frequency will be very helpful for communication. But does that mean that I can, if I want, I can use any frequency or I can produce any frequency? The answer is no, I cannot. So जो पूरा radio frequency bandwidth है, that is regulated by all governments in their respective domain. ऐसा नहीं कि कोई India specific चीज़ है. That radio spectrum, जैसे मान लो mobile phone companies using a particular frequency band, then it's not that they will randomly start using any frequency band they want. They need to get a license for it. And that license only and only government will provide it. So governments consider radio frequency bands as a sovereign property. I will repeat, however, this sovereign property is very different from other type of sovereign property because it is not a physical object. It's simply a license. It's like on piece of paper, government is giving you this license that this frequency band, you can go and use it now for number of years. जो भी है, एक बार हम allocate करेंगे, so that will be for foreseeable future. That you can use this frequency band for your mobile phone infrastructure. So how this will work? जैसे मान लो government ने, let me briefly tell you the journey of the mobile communication technology. We started with 1G, first generation of mobile technology. We have not used first generation of mobile technology. They were very large handsets. I'm not talking about telephones, by the way. I'm literally talking about mobile phones. I'm very sure you must have seen that in old movies or TV shows. Large handset, you have to like take out the antenna first, and then you can only use it for voice purposes. And even then, it suffered from a lot of noise. There was a lot of static in the communication network. Things improved a lot in 2G. So 1G used analog signal. It did not use digital signal. But then we jumped to 2G, second generation of mobile phone technology. And frequency allocation started. In India, 2G, of course, always is remembered for that huge scam, which I'm very sure that all of you are aware about. So, second generation, jo hai, the remarkable change which happened from 1G to 2G, that mobile phone companies now shifted from analog to digital. And because they shifted from analog to digital, it was not just possible to send voice data or whatever you're talking, but even text messages now can be sent, those combinations of zeros and ones. So SMS, the concept of SMS became very popular because of that. So 2G mobile phone ka jo 2G pura generation and second generation, for me the best indicator of that is that Nokia ka 3310 jo phone tha. I don't know if you have used it or not, but it was a really, really powerful phone. When it vibrated, it felt like an earthquake. So it was a very strong phone. So then we jumped from 3G. Now 3G will be where we can say that smartphone started. The concept of smartphone, that multimedia content you can access. You are connected to global internet, even though your speed was not very high, but things did improve a lot. 4G is where the difference between mobile phone and computer almost eroded. That whatever you can do on a computer, now you can do on a mobile phone, so many apps. But even within 4G, there have been many stages of development, by the way. When 4G was earlier developed, then it did not allow both voice and internet data to be transmitted on the same network. So what it means is that 4G network, it allowed more speed, better latency. I'm going to explain latency in today's class. A lot of things improved. And mobile phone literally became smart, and that difference between mobile phone and computer, that eroded a lot. But there was a problem, that 4G phones jo hai, if you are on a call, and if you want to then access internet data, then the earlier 4G network did not know how to package both of them together. So your voice data will use 4G network, the high efficient network, but your internet data, that will use the older network, 2G network or 3G network. So your internet speed suffered, specifically if you are on a phone call. This was called LTE, long-term evolution. Like, it was literally a process of long-term. So this technology is called LTE technology. But then more developments happened. Some telecom companies found a way that how to package both of this together. That even if you are on a phone call, and then you want to explore internet data, both can be packaged together and both can now travel with the help of same network. And that led to development of VoLTE, voice over long-term evolution. So in India, for example, Jio became the first company to introduce VoLTE. As of now, all of us are using VoLTE. Koi bhi LTE khali nahi hai. All of us are using VoLTE. But in 2015-16, if you had a 4G mobile phone, there was a very good chance that you're using LTE, and your internet data suffered if you are on a voice call. So now we are entering into 5G. So how does spectrum auction work in this entire process? मान लो, telecom companies earlier at the time of 2G, and all of the figures which I'm going to write, these are just indicative figures. Like, do not think of them ki exactly yahi frequency use hua tha. But let's say that for 2G, mobile phone companies and government, they both did their own research. By the way, all of this occurs at global level also. There are some global bodies which are responsible for developing standards for 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. I'm going to talk about that also. Let's say that companies decide that this is the best frequency for 2G, right? But as I said, this frequency band is considered as a sovereign property by any respective government in their own geographical domain. So just because this frequency you can produce does not mean you have the right to produce it. If you do not have a license and then you are using this frequency, you will be jailed for it. You will be fined, you will be jailed for it. So frequency bands are highly regulated. There is a regulatory authority. In all countries, there is a regulatory authority. Just in India, the regulatory authority is TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. जो ट्राई है वो डिसाइड करेगी that frequency band, हम कौन सा frequency band कौन से network के लिए हम use करेंगे. So let's say government announced in newspaper that this frequency band is available for 2G mobile phone. Many companies came, bid for it. Let me briefly explain what was that scam all about. उसको भी अभी यहीं हम समझ सकते हैं. ये जो auction है, जो spectrum auction है, it is not like a typical auction. ये भी अप्रिशिएट करना बहुत ज़रूरी है, दैट स्पेक्ट्रम ऑक्शन इज़ नॉट लाइक अ टिपिकल ऑक्शन. जैसे मान लो 600 to 800 मेगाहर्ट्ज़ गवर्नमेंट ने अनाउंस किया दैट वी आर गिविंग लाइसेंस, and if you want to use some range of frequency out of this 200 megahertz of bandwidth, then you can come and bid for it. And if we like your bid, then this will be allocated to you. But this is not like any other auction, because when you think of an auction, then two parties are involved in an auction. I want to sell something, I want to auction something. All of you are, let's say, buyer. And then I start the bidding process. And जो भी highest bidder होगा, I'm going to sell that to that highest bidder. So you'll always give this opportunity that can you match the bid and can you go higher and higher. And that is how normal auction works, that the money will go to, the item will go to the highest bidder. But in spectrum auction, the most important stakeholder is not even part of the auction. And that is us. We are consumers. Finally, we are going to use that mobile frequency band. But we are not part of the process. This auction is happening between government agencies and private companies or public companies. Government companies भी हो सकती हैं. But this auction is happening between government and companies. But the most important stakeholder are consumers. So if government aims to maximize revenue for itself, then companies will charge a lot of money from consumers. Either this, or they will not invest a lot into telecom infrastructure because they already have incurred a lot of cost by paying a lot of money to the government itself. So government often will not try to maximize its revenue. Yes, government will try to generate money out of it, but the focus will not be maximization of revenue for the government itself. Government will give enough leeway to companies that you also have resources available for telecom infrastructure development, और overall consumer पे बहुत ज़्यादा burden ना हो, right? तो ये एक generally एक goal होगा. तो ये एक बड़ा unique type का auction है, where the most important stakeholder is not even part of the auction. And we cannot, of course, we cannot become part of this auction. That goes without saying. But let's say 2G became very successful in India. By the way, what was the scam all about? Ideally, government should invite all the bids, should listen to all the bids, and it should go to the best bidder or whatever government thinks the best bidder is. In case of 2G, it became like first come, first service basis. That whoever, how much money didn't matter, whoever came and bid for it, the spectrum was allocated to that particular company. So government did not follow its own protocol. That you have made a protocol that how that spectrum auction will occur, but आपने खुद का protocol follow नहीं किया. And that led to losses to the government. And this was highlighted by CAG report that you have incurred a loss of 1.63 lakh crore, something like that. Now that figure, as of now, when we look back at the spectrum auction process, then that figure, that loss which CAG highlighted, that is exaggerated, hugely exaggerated. With the benefit of hindsight, we can say that. But still, there should be no denying that there was a procedural lapse. How much loss it led to, that's a separate question. But there was a procedural lapse, that government did not follow its own protocol there. So that was the scam all about. At that point of time, it became a huge deal, that such a huge scam, such a huge loss to the country. Now we know that it was not of loss of that much of scale, but it definitely did not follow proper procedures, and some loss definitely did happen because of that. But let's say now people are demanding better services from telecom companies. 2G में बहुत सारा call drop हो रहा है. Other countries have started smartphones. So Indian government also decided that we will go for 3G now. So this frequency band is not enough. Now, not enough in sense of that more number of users are going to have mobile phone, and not it's just number of users, but their demands have also increased. So earlier users were very happy with simple voice call. They want SMS, but now they also want multimedia content. They want to be part of the global internet with help of their mobile phone itself. And for all of that, you need more frequency bands. So government will say that, okay, we are allocating more frequency band, that let's say we have now frequency band available from 800 to, let's say, 1200 megahertz or 1500 megahertz. So now we are going into gigahertz, that 1 gigahertz or 2 gigahertz, those frequency bands are available. Similarly, same thing will happen in 4G, that the existing frequency bands are not enough to fulfill the requirements of 4G. So we need to go and explore new frequency band. And same thing will happen for 5G. So you're absolutely right that last year, in 2022, in month of October, government announced 5G frequency bands. That 5G frequency bands, and 5G frequency band by the way बहुत बड़ा range है. So we are going to allow bid for frequency band, and many companies did bid for it. So Jio had the maximum buying of frequency band, followed by Airtel, followed by Vodafone Idea. But even Adani has entered into the foray. So Adani also bought a lot of frequency band. So all of these companies bought license to utilize frequency bands belonging to 5G technology. Right. So that is what I'm going to discuss in today's class. That what does the word 5G mean? And what are the technologies behind 5G? Because 5G is not one technology. It should be very clear when I use the word 5th generation of mobile technology, then there are a lot of things which are backing this 5th generation. So what are those things? I'm going to discuss that. So give this heading 5G and write down few things here. 5G stands for 5G stands for 5G stands for 5th generation of mobile phone technology. 5th generation of mobile phone technology. Succeeding 4G. Succeeding 4G. It aims to provide faster data download and upload, faster data download and upload, low latency, wider coverage, stable connections, among others. Wider coverage, stable connections, among others. It can be distinguished on 4G on following parameters. It can be distinguished with 4G on following parameters. The first, which all of us understand, appreciate, use in our day-to-day life, is what is the speed of the network, right? We measure that speed into KB per second or MB per second or GB per second. So 4G network में जैसे जो सबसे important parameter ये है that if the entire bandwidth is available to you, that you are part of a network and जितना भी bandwidth है वो सिर्फ आपके पास available है, and you are free to use all of the bandwidth for yourself, then what is the maximum speed you are going to attain? Versus what is the average speed you get in your day-to-day life. Now, average speed can of course vary depending upon the congestion in the network, how many people, how network is smooth, maybe some error has occurred, some servers have been down, whatever. Like a lot of factors will decide what will be the average actual speed you are going to get. But what should be the peak data rate? What is the maximum data rate if all the bandwidth is available to you? So in case of 4G, we use a word here, peak data rate. That peak data rate will be 1 GB per second. But average speed also should be about 100 Mbps, 50 to 100 Mbps, definitely it should be there. But if the average speed I should get should be 50 to 100 Mbps per second. This दिस इज सेम, ये पर सेकेंड है, यहाँ पे एक काम करते हैं सेम यूज कर लेते हैं, GB per second. In case of 5G, that peak data rate should be 20 GB per second, so it is 20 times faster than 4G network, and even average speed should be somewhere around 600 to 800 MB per second. But average speed is frankly not a criteria, just because in terms of practical terms, this is the speed you are going to get. Hence, I'm using the word average speed. The more appropriate criteria is that peak data rate, that how much maximum speed you can attain, given that all of the bandwidth is only and only available to you. Then there is another parameter called latency. First, let me define latency. Latency is how much time it takes for a network to respond to your request. That you have requested something, you want some instructions to be executed, but how much time network is taking for that instruction to be executed. So it is very different from speed. While speed is measured in terms of how many bits of data, KB or MB or GB, whatever, you can download or upload per second. Latency literally is measured in second. Now second is a very huge figure here, so we often measure this into millisecond. Just say, let me give you again practical example. That a lot of time you are typing on your mobile phone, but as you have typed the entire word, and the word, there is a lag here. The word has actually not appeared on the screen. There is a lag, and you can feel that lag. So that lag which you feel in your network is called latency. Sometimes what happens is that I write something here on board, and again I feel that the words are not actually being written as I'm writing. So I can feel that delay here. You may not notice it, but I can feel that delay. So that lag in the network, whenever you want a network to execute certain instructions, that lag is called latency. We often use a word for ping rate here. So don't confuse, again same words हैं, same meaning है. So latency जितना कम हो network हमारा उतना अच्छा है, बहुत simple है. तो जितना कम latency है, जितना कम lag है, that network is better. Speed जितना ज़्यादा है, उतना ज़्यादा बढ़िया है, but latency जितना कम है, उतना ज़्यादा बढ़िया है. So latency should be as less as possible, that the time taken by network to respond to your request to execute an instruction is called latency, and lesser the time, better will be the network. In case of 4G, the goal was to achieve a latency of 10 millisecond, but that was not achieved. The latency which was actually achieved was about 20 to 30 millisecond. Milli is 1 by 1000 here. So this was the latency which was achieved in case of 4G network. And in case of 5G network, the goal here is to achieve a latency of 1 millisecond. So 1 by 1000 second of latency. So almost like everything is happening in real time. We use another parameter, connection density. Which simply means that in some unit area, let's call that unit area to be, let's say 1 kilometer square. In a unit area, how many devices a network can support? Right? It's again, remember, think of a wider road and how many vehicles it can manage at one point of time. So how many devices a particular network can support, that will be network density. So in case of 4G, the maximum is 100,000 devices per kilometer square. So 1 lakh. But in case of 5G, it is 1 million devices per kilometer square. So that is another parameter on which we can compare 4G and 5G. The bandwidth which has been allocated to 4G was about 3 gigahertz. The bandwidth which has been allocated to 5G is 30 gigahertz. The first question you can ask here is that who has decided all this? कोई ऐसा है कि हम random ने हमने decide कर लिया? या कोई body है, some regulatory body is there which is deciding all of those parameters? The answer is yes. There are some global bodies, not even national bodies. There are some global bodies which play a very important role in deciding all these parameters. The first and a very important body is International Telecommunication Union. आप लिख सकते हो, these standards are decided by, next paragraph, these standards are decided by, these standards are decided by, and I will mention 3 bodies. International Telecommunication Union, ITU. This is an agency of United Nations. But more important than ITU is a body called 3GPP. Third Generation Partnership Project. Third Generation Partnership Project. What type of body is this? To explain this, let me tell you about one more body which is in India. There is an organization in India called Telecommunication Standard Development Society of India. Don't worry, abhi likhne ki zarurat nahi hai, I'm going to make you write this. So Telecommunication Standard Development Society of India, it is not a government body. It is, however, a non-profit body. This non-profit body will have representation from all telecom companies, jitne bhi telecom companies hai, unka representation hoga, first. Second, they will also have some representation from think tanks, some academia, like topmost institutes ke people who are doing some research there, and even maybe they will collaborate with government agencies. But this in itself is not a government body. It's not a government organization. It is a non-profit society. And the purpose of this non-profit society is to determine how telecom sector should develop in India. That given the capabilities we have, given the technologies we have, how things should develop in India. And the same way TSDSI works in India, you have all these organizations all across the world who work in their own respective geographical domain. There is a body in North America, there is a body in South America, there is a body in Europe, some other part of Asia. And all of these bodies, 7 of them, all across the world, have come together at the global stage. And they form this 3GPP, Third Generation Partnership Project. That at the global level, what should be the standards of many telecom technologies which we are using, including 5G, which we are using in our day-to-day life. So 3GPP, again, it is a non-profit body. You can think of this as some sort of think tank, but a very useful think tank in the sense that it is playing an essential role in determining at the global scale what should be the standard of modern ICT technologies such as 5G or many other things also. तो आप लिख सकते हो 3GPP unites 7 telecommunications standard development organizations, 7 telecommunication standard development organizations of the world, including TSDSI, Telecommunication Standard Development Society of India, including TSDSI. So out of those 7, one is TSDSI, Telecommunication Standard Development Society of India. Bracket में TSDSI के लिख लेना. It works as a non-profit society. It works as a non-profit society. Non-profit society. There is a third body called IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. अब IEEE का जो सबसे important role है वो actually 5G में नहीं है. The most important role they play in determining standards is for Wi-Fi, that wireless fidelity technology. As of now, we are using Wi-Fi 6. जैसे Wi-Fi में भी generations हैं. How things are going to improve. So we are using Wi-Fi 6, but soon we will be using Wi-Fi 7. So how Wi-Fi 6 and 7 will be different from each other, that will be decided by IEEE. So IEEE का जो सबसे important job है, that is to determine standards for Wi-Fi and many other technologies. But they do contribute. पहले तो है क्या ये? Let's start with that. What is this organization? Again, this is a private organization headquartered in New York, USA. This is a group of top engineers of the world. And this group organizes lot of events, lot of workshops, lot of competitions also, all across the world, to make people aware about the developments in modern ICT, but also to recruit best of the minds which will work in this organization. So this organization plays a very important role at the global stage. What will be the standard of modern ICT technologies? The most important one will be Wi-Fi. जैसे Wi-Fi जो हम use करते हैं घरों में, that uses a frequency of 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz also. Wi-Fi 7 में use even higher frequency. But generally जो अभी हम use करते हैं Wi-Fi अपने घरों में, that is using a radio frequency of 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz. And by the way, ये जो 2.4 and 5 gigahertz है, that will not be part of any spectrum auction. तो कोई भी government इसको free करके रखेगी, because that will be used for wireless fidelity, global internet connectivity. We want those Wi-Fi devices so that other mobile devices, laptops, they can be connected to the global internet. So Wi-Fi के case में जो standards हैं, they will be decided by IEEE. But this does play, or this does provide input even in case of 5G development. आप लिख सकते हो? A private body, a private organization, IEEE के बारे में, a private organization, headquartered in New York, with best of the engineers of the world, best of the engineers of the world, engineers of the world. It determines standards for Wi-Fi. It determines standards for Wi-Fi. But also provides input to mobile telecommunication technology. Mobile telecommunication technology. Telecommunication technology. These are the three important bodies we should know. They play a very important role in deciding standards. ITU will decide major standards, like जो major चीज़ें हैं, क्या speed, क्या latency होगा, but जो minor details हैं, given the capability, because ITU के पास उतना information नहीं है, that what is the capability available to telecom companies. That information is more available to all these standard organizations, those 7 organizations, including TSDSI. And इनका जो input होगा, that will be much more important. So जो minor details हैं, that what will be 4G, 5G, how this is going to be developed, what will be these steps, all of those things will be decided by 3rd generation partnership project with some inputs from IEEE also. So these 3 organizations we should know, they play a very important role in developing standards. But I will repeat, 5G is not one technology. All of the parameters which we have written here, all of the parameters which we have written here, these parameters are possible because of amalgamation of many technologies working together. So telecom companies like Jio or Airtel or Vodafone, they have to upgrade their existing network so that all of these parameters are possible, that we can have higher speed or lower latency. So this is what I'm going to discuss the next. Give this heading, technologies of 5G. Technologies of 5G. Technologies of 5G. First is what we call millimeter wave. Let me explain this. This is again a nuanced point. We need to understand it properly. जो generally जब हम पढ़ते हैं, जैसे those who have ICT as their background, they will know this. That generally when we read about mobile communication technology, then we often read a statement that the technology and frequency are independent of each other. What it means is that I can use, let's say, 800 megahertz of frequency for 2G, for 3G, for 4G, and also for 5G. It will be rest of the technologies which I haven't mentioned till now. There will be other technologies of 5G which will determine that even on the same frequency band, let's say 800 to 900 megahertz of frequency band, 5G का जो performance होगा, it will be much better than compared to 2G, 3G and 4G. Or 4G का performance will be better than 3G or 2G. So I can use on similar frequency band, I can use many generations of mobile technology and my performance will improve. And that is because of other underlying technology I haven't mentioned, but I'm going to discuss that. So why have I started with frequency band then? Because अभी तक जो भी frequency bands mobile phone के केस में use किया था, जैसे मान लो हम typical FM radio आप सुनते हो. FM radio uses frequency of about 90 to 115 megahertz. Just imagine some FM famous frequency FM radio, Radio Mirchi. Radio Mirchi is 98.3 megahertz. So for radio FM, we are using this frequency band of somewhere around 88 to 115 megahertz. For mobile communication technology, we started investigating from about 400, 500 megahertz. We kept on increasing because as number of people increased, as requirements increased, we have to go to higher frequency bands. The existing frequency bands are not enough to fulfill those requirements. But till the time of 4G, we still used frequency band of 1, 2, 3, 4 gigahertz. For the first time in mobile phone communication technology, we are actually investigating millimeter. Now millimeter wave का मतलब होता है all of the radio frequencies from 300 gigahertz to 30 gigahertz. And the reason it is called millimeter wave, because आप इसका निकालना आप जाके wavelength, ये wavelength होगा 10 millimeter और ये क्या होगा 1 millimeter. Remember, frequency and wavelength reciprocal to each other. So if it is 10 times higher, wavelength will be 10 times less. Again, I already have told you that C is equal to F lambda. C here is speed of light, 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. Giga is 10 to the power 9. आप lambda निकाल के देख लो. Lambda will be into millimeter. So for the first time, for 5G, so in satellite communication, we already have used these technologies. I have told you that for satellite communication जो ITU allocate करती है frequency, that is from 1 to 40 gigahertz. You can use anything from 1 to 40 gigahertz. But for the first time for mobile communication, we are actually exploring this technology, this frequency band. Particularly that 30, 40, 50 gigahertz frequency band that is being explored by many companies. So this is happening for the first time, that for mobile phone, we are using this high frequency band, and at higher frequency you have more and more bandwidth available, which basically means that your mobile network can carry more amount of data compared to previous network. So this we are doing it for the first time. Now why we did not do it in the past, that's also a very important question. Turns out that ये जो higher frequency bands हैं, even within radio frequency, the higher frequency band, they do not travel very far. Why they do not travel very far? Because remember, after all, they are light, and light is subjected to various type of phenomena associated with light. So while lower frequency band can easily cross solid objects, higher frequency bands, they find it difficult to cross solid surfaces. I told you that transparency of an object depends upon the frequency of the light. So while a radio frequency of 1 gigahertz can cross even twice or thrice thickness of this wall, but a frequency of 50 gigahertz may find it difficult to cross this. First problem. Second problem, that higher frequency bands will be more affected by atmospheric disturbances. If you have more rainfall, snowfall, lot of metallic objects are in the vicinity, then higher frequency band will be more affected by it. So it's not that they have less energy. Actually, higher frequency has more energy. Remember, energy and frequency are proportional to each other. It's not because they have less energy. It is because, after all, they are a type of wave, and wave will be subjected to some of the phenomena which can disturb a wave, such as absorption, such as scattering, presence of objects, atmospheric phenomena. All of those things can cause problem in propagation of wave. And high frequency high radio frequencies, they are more disturbed by such type of problem. So we are trying to find solution. We have actually found some really good solution how to tackle that. But एक जो fundamental benefit ये है that higher frequency you get more bandwidth, and which allows you to carry more and more amount of data, and all of that speed and latency which you talk about, we can achieve that at higher frequency. तो आप लिख सकते हो, for mobile communication, for mobile communication, for mobile communication, for the first time, millimeter waves are being used. Millimeter waves, अब bracket में लिख लेना, 30 to 300 gigahertz. And again, I will repeat the reason we are calling it millimeter wave, simply because इसका जो wavelength है, that will be 10 millimeter to 1 millimeter. For the first time, we are using millimeter wave at higher frequencies. At higher frequencies, large bandwidths are available. Large bandwidths are available, which can provide high data rates. Which can provide high data rates. Does that mean that we are not at all using low frequency for 5G? Not at all. ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. वो डिपेंड करता है कि अलग अलग टेलीकॉम कंपनीज सबका अपना अपना स्ट्रैटेजी है. जैसे इन इंडिया, जियो इज एक्सप्लोरिंग हाई फ्रीक्वेंसी बैंड, बट जो एयरटेल है, दे स्टिल आर यूजिंग लो फ्रीक्वेंसी और मिड फ्रीक्वेंसी बैंड. जैसे आई हैव दिस आर्टिकल फ्रॉम नोकिया on Nokia's website itself, and how 5G frequency bands are divided. So you have a frequency band called low band frequency, all the frequency bands less than 1 gigahertz. At less than 1 gigahertz, we used 2G, we used 3G, we used 4G, and we are also using 5G. So there are companies who are doing that also. इसका benefit क्या होगा? इसका range ज़्यादा होगा. But इसका नुकसान क्या होगा? इसका जो bandwidth होगा कम होगा, and आपका जो data rate है वो कम होगा. Then we go to the next frequency band, mid bands, which is from 1 to 2.6, 3.5 to 6. At 1 to 2.6, we used 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G again. At 3.5 to 6, we only used 4G, and now we are using 5G. Airtel is doing this. So Airtel ka India mein jo strategy hai, that is to use that mid-frequency band. Now mid-frequency band will have more bandwidth compared to low frequency, but uska range thoda sa kam hoga low frequency ke muqable. And then what Jio is doing, that they are exploring or they are using this frequency band of 24 to 40. So the moment you go above 30, you are into millimeter frequency band. Millimeter frequency का बहुत obvious benefit ये है that higher frequency, more bandwidth, more amount of data, better data rate, all of those things. But problem here is range, that आपका जो range होगा कम होगा. And I'm very sure that if you have mobile phone with 5G, then you must have felt this, that 5G network does not work really well if you are very far away from the 5G small mobile cells जो हैं. So that is a problem of 5G. And unless we do something about it. Now what are we doing about it? That is the next technology. Give this heading, small cell stations. I want to re-emphasize on this point. Just because I have written millimeter waves does not mean that 5G can only be used in millimeter waves. 5G can be used even in 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 gigahertz frequencies, even less than 1 gigahertz frequency. But lot of 5G, lot of companies are actually exploring millimeter wave. But what are they doing to tackle this problem of range of signal? For that, they are using what we call small cell stations. In fact, I have a slide on that previous point, that if you have a high band frequency band, about 30 gigahertz, this is your range. If you have a very low band frequency, 600 megahertz, it can travel up to distance of few miles, 3, 4 miles. But if you have a very high frequency band, then it will be often less than a mile. In fact, it will be in few hundred meters, maximum perhaps a kilometer or even less than a kilometer. So as you keep increasing the frequency, the range increases. The range increases that jo higher frequency bands hai, they are more susceptible to atmospheric disturbances, absorption, scattering. But the low frequency bands hai, they are less susceptible to those problems. So what a small cell is. जो typical mobile phone towers आपने देखे हैं, large mobile phone towers become visible from very far away. You're not going to find those large mobile towers anymore. In 5G, you'll find something like this. This is called small cell station, which is very powerful in terms of how many signals it can receive or transmit. But इसका जो density है बहुत ज़्यादा है. So while in case of mobile tower, the typical older mobile towers which you have seen, they were located after every few kilometers. This will be located after every few hundred meters to take care of this range problem. Because remember, mobile towers use as repeater. I told you the concept of repeater, that they're receiving signal, amplifying signal, sending it to desirable direction. But if they're very far away located from each other, then that's not good. So that is why small cells will be much, much more denser. And they will not be as large as the typical mobile towers which you have seen. So आप लिख सकते हो about small cell stations. Millimeter wave frequencies have limited range. Millimeter wave frequencies have limited range. Limited range. Therefore, 5G networks rely on a larger number of smaller, less powerful base stations, to relay signal over shorter distances. to relay signal over shorter distances. To relay signal over shorter distances. I will repeat this. Shorter, यहाँ पे I'm comparing this with previous networks. I'm comparing this with 2G, 3G और 4G, जहाँ पे जो frequency का जो range है वो ज़्यादा है, right? जो higher frequencies हैं, they will be susceptible to signal degradation. आप लिख सकते हो in fact, higher frequencies are susceptible to signal degradation. Higher frequencies are susceptible to signal degradation. Signal degradation due to absorption, scattering. Higher frequencies are susceptible to signal degradation, absorption, scattering, affected by atmospheric events, affected by atmospheric events, affected by atmospheric events such as rainfall, snowfall, etc. Affected by atmospheric events such as rainfall, snowfall, etc. There is a technology called beamforming. If you are using modern Wi-Fi devices, आपके घर में रूम में जो Wi-Fi राउटर है, जैसे आपके पास फाइबर राउटर है, मान लो जियो फाइबर का राउटर है, एयरटेल फाइबर का राउटर है, then there is a very good chance that you are already using this technology. A typical mobile phone tower in the previous generations, it basically the signal went in the all direction, and whatever direction your mobile phone is located will be able to receive that signal, and you have a network connectivity. But think of beamforming as a torchlight compared to the previous mobile phone network as some sort of light bulb. So the light bulb hai, that is going to illuminate the entire room. It will send light in the all direction. But the light will become very dim, very fast, because light ka energy same hai, and it is covering more and more volume, more and more area, and because of that, its intensity is going to reduce. But think of a flashlight of same power. That flashlight is not going to illuminate the entire room, but in whatever direction it is going to go, it will illuminate that particular direction, that particular place. Other part of that will be darker. But it will maintain its intensity despite traveling for some more distance. So beamforming is like that torchlight. So there are now techniques, and these techniques are very sophisticated techniques, that antennas are able to now maximize the strength of signal in the direction mobile phone is located compared to the previous techniques where this was not available. So if you have a 5G network signal in your mobile phone and you're talking to somebody, then you are getting a direct signal from the nearby cell rather than that signal propagating in all direction. So that is a difference between beamforming, which is part of 5G, and the previous networks which again propagated signal in all direction with equal strength. तो आप लिख सकते हो? This technology optimizes the focus of signal. This technology optimizes the focus of signal, directing it straight to where it's needed, directing it straight to where it's needed, rather than broadcasting it in multiple directions. Rather than broadcasting it in multiple directions. rather than broadcasting it in multiple directions. This increases data rates and decreases network congestion. This increases data rates and decreases network congestion. This increases data rates and decreases network congestion. Three more technology. I think I can give a list, much larger list, but I think three more will be enough. This technology called massive MIMO. MIMO का मतलब है multiple input, multiple output. MIMO technology was used in 4G also, but in 5G it has been further improved, hence the word massive MIMO. इसका meaning बहुत simple है, that one base station, one small cell, is capable of receiving hundreds of signals simultaneously, capable of transmitting hundreds of signals simultaneously without any type of interference among those signals. So using same network to transmit many signals, hundreds and thousands of them without interference, that capability is called MIMO capability. आप लिख सकते हो? 5G uses advanced antenna technologies. 5G uses advanced antenna technologies. Advanced antenna technologies involving multiple transmitters and receivers. Multiple transmitters and receivers to increase network capacity. To increase network capacity. And two more technology I can mention. Network slicing. To appreciate network slicing, that what exactly we aim to do, let me use some like random analogy here. Like I'm using an analogy to explain what network slicing is. Imagine a person who is very rich, has a lot of property, unlimited property, has many sons and daughters. The person is on deathbed and deciding how to divide this property among his sons and daughters. Now one way to divide that will be to give everybody equal portion, right? But person is more intelligent. He thought that some of his sons and daughters, they have not been very fortunate, even though they have been very hardworking. And overall life has not been favorable to them, and they're not doing well. But in terms of effort, in terms of the character they show, they're exemplary. Some sons and daughters, they are ekdam nalayak hai wo. Like we know that the moment we give them money, often sons, not daughters, often when we give them money, they will be using that on some jua or somewhere, something. So they are going to spend all of that. They are simply going to sell off all of that property. And then there are some sons and daughters who are doing really well in their life. They have been hardworking and they're doing really well. They do not need as such any support from you. And accordingly, the person decided that let's divide the same property. People who are not doing well off but very hardworking, let's give them more property. People who are doing very well off have been hardworking, some property to them also. But people who are not, like, they're not doing well because of their own character, then let's give them some money that they survive, but nonetheless, it shouldn't be in their control, or like, let's divide this property in a more intelligent manner. So network slicing is like this, that you have same bandwidth available, but that bandwidth is allocated to different type of requirements depending upon the demands of that specific requirement. Jaise, there will be some demands where you cannot compromise upon the bandwidth itself, that you need very high bandwidth. For example, think of this online class right now. A lot of students are watching this lecture online. Live lecture online, they cannot compromise on the bandwidth part. If their network does not have enough bandwidth, there will be a lot of glitches in this video streaming. They will not be able to enjoy this lecture. Right? So यहाँ पे we cannot compromise upon the bandwidth. Maybe even if there is some lag, there is some latency, it's fine. That मान लो कि जो मेरा lecture है, आप 5 सेकंड बाद सुन रहे हो, तो भी फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. 5 सेकंड is fine. Of course, it shouldn't be like 1 or 2 minutes. इतना latency किसी network में नहीं होता. But whatever I'm delivering it here, online students are watching it, let's say, with a delay of 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Even then, that is fine. They can ask question. I will be able to relate to the topic I was teaching. But think of another requirement. There is a concept of Internet of Things I'm going to discuss in today's class itself. That you have, let's say, autonomous cars आपने पढ़ा है, self-driving car है. A self-driving car which has to execute a decision based on the traffic light. There is a sensor there. That sensor knows that traffic light is red, and it has to execute a decision. For that, it is dependent upon some sort of network connectivity. Let's assume it is 5G network connectivity. It does not require a lot of bandwidth. It's a very simple instruction that it has to apply a brake. It is dependent upon network connectivity for that. So bandwidth requirement बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है. But जो latency requirement है वहाँ पे हम compromise ही नहीं कर सकते. That you need to apply that brake immediately, as soon as possible. Even a 1 second delay can cause an accident. So that was an entirely, totally opposite set of requirement. Right, now we are using network connectivity for augmented reality, virtual reality. I'll be talking about that also. And all of those things, they often require very high bandwidth, also very high latency, that you cannot compromise either on bandwidth or latency. So many things. जैसे online gaming एक simple सा example ले लो. आप online game खेल रहे हो, you need lot of bandwidth, and you also cannot compromise upon latency. That whatever instructions you are executing, you want them to be executed in real time. You do not want any type of lag there. Those who have played FIFA or anything, you know what I'm talking about. So you cannot compromise upon either latency or on bandwidth. So what 5G network does, that even though the physical network is only one, like the amount of bandwidth is same, but that bandwidth will be allocated in a more intelligent manner with help of many virtual networks. So 5G relies a lot upon virtual servers, lot on software. That even though there is one physical network, but those virtual servers are dividing that network into many networks, and all of those many networks are catering to different type of requirement. That is what network slicing is, an intelligent way to divide network to cater to different type of requirements. आप लिख सकते हो? This allows for the creation of multiple virtual networks on the top of a single physical 5G network. On the top of a single physical 5G network. On the top of a single physical 5G network. This can enable more efficient resource utilization. This can enable more efficient resource utilization. For different type of services. ये सारे जो टॉपिक्स हैं, जो भी हम टेक्नोलॉजीज हम पढ़े, अलग से भी आ सकता है. तो डोंट थिंक कि मैं खाली 5G यहाँ पे पढ़ा रहा हूँ. आई एम डिस्कसिंग ऑल ऑफ दिस टेक्नोलॉजीज साइमल्टेनियसली with help of 5G here, and I will be discussing few more technologies here. जैसे the next one in itself is a very interesting technology. Last one. Again, I can list many more technologies, part of 5G, but I think these 6 will be the most prominent, the most important technologies of 5G network. Edge computing. To explain edge computing, first I have a question from you. That I'm very sure many of you have heard this term cloud computing, right? What does that word mean? Like, what does cloud computing mean? Anyone who can answer this question? It's a very simple question. What is cloud computing? One of the most important thing which you do in, go ahead. That's perfect, but you're just like एक बहुत important part इसका ये है that we need some sort of network connectivity. But yes, you're absolutely right. That is what cloud computing is all about. That the best type of network connectivity is internet. So cloud here signifies on internet infrastructure, you are using internet infrastructure for computational purposes. Just say, think of how you have heard about that how in Pune or in Bengaluru you have all these IT companies, Wipro or Infosys or TCS. Which type of, and you also know that these are like some of the most important IT service providers, but किसको IT service provide कर रहे हैं? कहाँ की companies है? किसको कर रहे हैं? ये mostly India में नहीं कर रहे हैं. Most of the services they are providing services to American companies. Data which is being generated in America, which is stored also in America. That data is not stored in India. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो data कोई hard drive है यहाँ पे central server है, वो India में data stored है. But अगर मान लो India में भी stored है तो ऐसा नहीं है कि जो IT employees हैं उनके laptop में stored है वो. उनके laptop में clearly नहीं है. So what cloud computing enables you to do is that there are centralized servers. On those centralized servers, which by the way, those servers can handle huge amount of data, which is not at all possible in our day-to-day life hard drives, whatever we use in our day-to-day life. It simply do not have enough space and also do not have enough computational capacity to handle such huge amount of data processing. And that is where these huge data servers come into place. That these data servers which can not just handle huge amount of data, but they can also handle huge amount of data processing. And many people who are connected to this server, centralized server, with help of internet as an infrastructure, they can use that for data processing. So using computing or doing computing with help of cloud servers, cloud here basically means internet. So internet servers, that is what cloud computing is all about. Yes, I'm very sure that all of you know cloud storage, that you have mobile phone, आपने picture लिए, जो भी आपका मोबाइल फोन एंड्रॉयड है iOS है जो भी है इट इज़ गोइंग टू आस्क यू दैट मेक अ बैकअप कॉपी ऑफ दैट. आपने बैकअप बना लिया, यू चेंज योर मोबाइल फोन एंड यू गेट ऑल ऑफ दैट data back, all of those pictures back, all of that WhatsApp text message back, because there is a backup data. That mobile phone, that particular Android service provider, just like Google, it made a copy of your data on its cloud server. And when you made login, when you log in to some other device, you're able to recover all of that data back to your local device, which is your mobile phone. Now that is cloud storage. But cloud computing का एक सबसे simple example ले लो, that I give you an assignment that you have to prepare, let's say, some 100-page report on some specific issue, and I give 4 of you this assignment. And 4 of you decided that let's prepare 30 page and हम मिलेंगे साथ में and हम edit करके देख लेंगे कि final हमारा report क्या submit करना है. But one more way to do that will be that somebody created a Google Doc, and that Google Doc is shared among 4 of you, and you can now make a report live while all 4 of you can also comment upon each other while you are sitting together. Now that will be an example of cloud computing. It's not simple storage, but you're also making some changes to the document, and you can, all of you can also with the help of internet can give a feedback that what type of changes are required. Now that is a very simple use case of cloud computing, but you get the idea. So hundreds of gigabytes of data are being generated even by just one small company. That company wants to maintain its customer data, it wants to find some useful information out of it. It has hired some company in India located in Bengaluru, and that Bengaluru based company is working upon that data with help of cloud server. So that is what cloud computing is. With help of centralized data servers, with use of internet as an infrastructure, people can now use this cloud server and can use it for computation as well as for storage purposes. And that, by the way, revolutionized information technology. जो IT services हैं, that has been a great revolution in all across the world. But then there is a problem that for every simple decision making also, you are dependent upon some cloud server which is located very far away. जैसे, again I will go back to the example of online gaming. That आप FIFA खेल रहे हो. How many of you have played FIFA? Few of you. आप मान लो FIFA खेल रहे हो, online FIFA खेल रहे हो. You are using, you are controlling a player's movement. But even for a simple kick, that decision making is dependent upon some cloud server, which is located very far away. And that can increase the latency part. Remember I told you about latency? Latency जितना ज़्यादा होगा, जितना जो भी आपका सर्वर है जिस पे आपका decision making dependent है, वो बहुत ज़्यादा दूर located. And by the way, even if everything is happening with speed of light, but that data travels through packets, takes many direction, lot of congestion will be there, and all of that will delay the process. And we do not want this latency to occur. A doctor is performing a robotic surgery. By the way, remote surgery is possible nowadays. पहले तो ये भी पता होना चाहिए. The doctors can perform remote surgery. Doctor किसी और शहर में surgery perform कर सकते हैं with help of robots. But those robots have to be connected with really good network with very, very low latency. And even for small decision making, if it is dependent upon some cloud server very far away, and even a small latency can be problematic here, right? So even though remote surgery is possible, but often the most sophisticated surgery will be done in person itself. Very simple surgeries can be done remotely. But the plan here is that what if we can do remote surgery, complicated remote surgery, because we rely upon the network itself. That is where edge computing comes into place. Edge computing is not at all some sort of replacement of cloud computing. It should be very clear. Edge computing simply means, edge का मतलब है कि कहीं आसपास में. That आपका जो सर्वर है, वो कहीं बहुत दूर, जैसे आपको इंडिया में कुछ करना है. You are doing cloud computing in India with data which is generated in India, but for that decision making you are dependent upon a server which is located in California. I do not want that to happen. So edge computing essentially means that at the edge of the network, wherever you are located, in that similar geography there is a small server, and that small server can handle small amount of data, can handle small amount of data processing also. Your decision making becomes much, much more faster. Why I said that it shouldn't be considered as some sort of competitor or replacement of cloud computing, because cloud computing has not gone anywhere. In fact, they both complement each other. अभी क्या है कि जो cloud servers हैं उन पे बहुत सारा burden है. So much of work all across the world dependent upon centralized server. So a lot of things are now happening at decentralized level. जैसे आपकी पॉलिटी की क्लास तो अभी नहीं हुई है ना? पॉलिटी की क्लास में you will be taught about democratic decentralization, पंचायत, municipalities. ये तो सबको पता है about पंचायत and municipalities. आपको ये भी पता होगा, even though पॉलिटी की क्लास नहीं हुई है, but you do know that few things on certain matters union government make laws, on some other matters state government make laws. जैसे मान लो national security से चीज़ें होंगी union government करेगी, but कोई local law and order issue है तो state government करेगा. लेकिन मान लो कि आपके पंचायत में कोई नल खराब हो गया, तो उसके लिए तो आप मुख्यमंत्री के पास नहीं जाओगे. You'll not go to chief minister, you'll go to your local मुखिया there. So that is what democratic decentralization is, that all of the decisions which can be taken at grassroots level, they should ideally be taken at grassroots level, because decision making becomes much, much more faster, much, much more efficient. We do not want to dependent upon some centralized decision making for each and every small thing. So edge computing is like that. That for small type of instructions, for small type of execution of decision, we should not rely upon some centralized cloud servers. We can rely upon an edge server which is in the vicinity of the network. And I will repeat, edge server will not be as powerful as a centralized cloud server. It cannot handle huge amount of data. It cannot process huge amount of data. But for small decision making, it will be quite useful. So that is what edge computing is. And edge computing actually emerged independently of 5G. It emerged because of Internet of Things. And however, as of now, many companies are integrating edge computing as part of 5G network, because 5G का एक जो बहुत important goal ये है that हमको latency कम करना है, that we need to reduce latency, and for that edge computing is important. तो आप लिख सकते हो, in edge computing, data processing happens closer to the data source, rather than being sent to a centralized server, This reduces latency and accelerates data processing. This is complementing cloud computing. That cloud server पे load कम है, and cloud servers are also working efficiently. And edge computing cannot replace cloud computing, because जो edge servers हैं, they are not that powerful that they can handle terabytes of data and they can allow processing of all of that huge amount of data. That is not possible. So it's not that they are some sort of competitor to each other, they complement each other. But yes, there are differences between these two technologies. Cloud computing depends upon centralized data centers, centralized servers. Edge computing depends upon decentralized server. In cloud computing, data is stored somewhere very far away from where it is generated. In edge computing, it is stored and processed very close to where the data is being generated. So yes, we can compare them, but comparison does not mean that edge computing is some sort of replacement of cloud computing. This is about technologies of 5G. If you have any question in any of the technologies, you can ask questions. Otherwise, I will go to the benefit, like what type of use of 5G will be there. Okay. The question is about private 5G network. What some companies are doing, that unka headquarter jo hai, the question is asking is that there is something called private 5G network. That कुछ companies है उनका headquarter है दूर है, बहुत सारे employees काम करते हैं, बहुत सारा data उनको manage करना, they have to handle huge amount of data. So rather than relying upon this mobile network which connects all of us, let's have a mobile network connectivity only for our company. So using 5G, but for our private purposes. And in 5G, yes, governments have allowed that, even Government of India has allowed that. That there are certain frequency bands, you have to buy special license for that. It will be expensive for you, but it will be beneficial for you in the sense that you do not want to be part of that overall larger decision-making process. There are a few questions here. What is the role of Earth curved structure on electromagnetic wave? Now, electromagnetic wave is a larger word, but if your question is with respect to what is role of Earth curved structure on radio wave, on let's say mobile communication technology, that is very easy to understand, because Earth is a really huge planet. So in our day-to-day life, we see this flat surface. I have some mobile network signal. That signal can travel to some person here, not a problem. But this person is maybe a few hundred meters away, maybe even 1 kilometer away. Even up to one few kilometer, we do not have to worry about Earth ka jo curvature hai. Earth curvature comes into place when you have to send a signal to few kilometers, like few hundred kilometers. Let's say even at 100 kilometers, you will start feeling that impact of curved surface. So now you have to send a signal. You have a mobile tower here located, or some signal, some antenna sending signal, and I have a user who is located here. The signal will ऐसे randomly bend नहीं हो सकता है. ये radio signal, it is going to travel radially outward. So either जो ये signals होंगे, they will be absorbed by Earth's surface, it will not be able to reach you, and जो ये signals हैं, they will go in the outer space. So you do not have mechanism which can automatically bend that signal towards a specific user device. That is why I need a mobile tower here also. I need a mobile tower here also, that it keep catching the signal, keep repeating the signal, and send it towards the user. That is the impact of Earth's curvature on radio signal. Is BSNL, let me handle this online doubts, I will come to it. Is BSNL using low bandwidths? The correct word will be low frequencies. Is BSNL using low frequency? I frankly do not know about each and every company's strategy, so I cannot answer that question. Can these frequencies be affected by solar winds? So let me rephrase the question. Can solar winds or coronal mass ejections, can they affect mobile communication? The answer is yes, but if they are very powerful enough. Because remember, जो पूरा mobile network है वो धरती पे है, वो कोई space में satellite पे dependent नहीं है. So if there is a very powerful coronal mass ejection where charged particles are entering into lower atmosphere, then yes, even our mobile communication will be disrupted. But for that, it will require a very, very powerful coronal mass ejection. Explain beamforming. Beamforming ko appreciate again. I can give that simple example which I said earlier. There are a typical base station, mobile base station, emitting signal in all direction. Whatever signal strength it emits, signal strength तो हम randomly increase नहीं कर सकते बीच में हवा में. So signal strength same है, but it is covering more and more area. So signal का जो strength, because of that signal attenuates. Remember I talked about the concept of attenuation. To compensate for attenuation, we often amplify that signal. In beamforming, what we do, that rather than broadcasting signal in every direction, कि मान लो एक mobile tower है which is broadcasting signal in every direction. Rather than doing that, let's find a way that can we maximize the signal strength to a specific receiving device. And by the way, we can do that. This is again one of the very sophisticated technologies, but we can do that. That जो signal strength है, that is what this picture is. That जो side lobes हैं यहाँ पे, they are very weak, but जो main beam है, where this particular device is located, that signal strength is very high. So because signal strength is very high, its range increases. And even though it is high frequency, susceptible to degradation and all, but because of more intensity now, it can travel to more distances. That is the benefit of beamforming. But internet comes from where origin sources and why it is costliest somewhere and cheaper somewhere. अब वो तो डिपेंड करता है, वो अब तो इकोनॉमिक्स का क्वेश्चन हो गया. जैसे इंडिया में चीप होने का एक बहुत बड़ा कारण ये है दैट मार्जिन बहुत है, सॉरी मार्जिन कम है बट लोग बहुत है. जैसे मान लो इवन इफ यू हैव अ कंपनी हैज़ लो मार्जिन, दैट पर कस्टमर आपका मार्जिन बहुत कम है. वॉट एवर यू स्पेंड 1 रुपीज़ and you are getting, let's say, 1.01 rupees from one customer. Like you have a margin of only 1%, but like there are 1.4 billion of us. So because of the absolute sheer number which India has, companies can afford to keep a low margin and still be profitable. So it will depend upon a lot of factors. It will depend upon how much money they are spending on telecom infrastructure, what is the consumer base, all many parameters will decide that cost of internet क्या होगा या क्या नहीं होगा. Why the cloud servers of other countries is in India? Okay, so cloud servers, let me rephrase that question. There has been a huge criticism. I would have talked about this जब हम data security के बारे में बात करते. But there has been a huge criticism that think about how India is such an important nation in terms of the amount of data which is generated in India. All of us have so many apps on our mobile phone. So many, we are using Android or Apple, they both are not Indian companies. So many of the tech giants which we use in our day-to-day life, these tech giants belong to America. And the data they are, so of course they have their consumer base in America, goes without saying. But the second largest consumer base is in India because China does not allow a lot of tech companies to operate in China. So India often is second largest consumer base for many of these companies. चाहे Facebook हो, Microsoft हो, Amazon हो, कोई भी हो, Google हो. And the amount of data of Indians which is generated, वो store कहाँ होगा? Most of the time it will be stored outside country. And there is a concept called data colonialism, that these tech giants are getting benefited out of data generated from Indian. What was colonialism? Some foreign nation exploiting resources of colony so that they will be benefited out of it. So data colonialism is a word used, that data is generated in India, in Africa, but that data center बनाने के लिए आपको बहुत सारा मनी स्पेंड करना पड़ेगा, उसको मैनेज करने के लिए आपको लोग हायर करने पड़ेंगे, आप एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट करोगे अपने कंट्री में. So why are you not doing the same thing in India, right? So lot of companies now, so government of India has actually taken lot of initiative. अब इसके बहुत सारे कारण हैं. इंडिया का साइबर सिक्योरिटी इंफ्रा उतना अच्छा नहीं है, पावर डिसरप्शन बहुत सारे हैं, बहुत सारा वाटर चाहिए होता है to cool data centers, all of those things. So government of India has this dedicated focus that we are going to spend a lot of money. We are going to give some concessions also, but we do want these companies to make data centers in India. And maybe those data centers initially will be used for data generated by Indians, but maybe they can also be used for the same way as of now Indians' data is generated and stored in California. Maybe some other data located in Asia. India emerges as a hub, and all of the data generated in Asia will be stored into India, right? तो ये डिपेंड करता है कि अगर बाकी कंट्रीज़ के जो डेटा लोकलाइजेशन लॉज बहुत टफ नहीं हो, so companies often will use for their own benefit. I will talk about this in data security. Does aluminum foil affect signal? Aluminum is a metal, and yes, it can affect. All metals can affect signal. All metals affect the signal, yes. How can we send data from 4G of different frequency, 5G of different frequency? Now that's a good question. For that, we need to understand what our mobile network is. आप ये भी क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते थे कि हम जियो से एयरटेल पे कैसे फ़ोन कर लेते हैं. I just told you that Jio is operating on a different frequency. Airtel is operating on a different frequency. तो हम जियो से हमने एयरटेल पे कैसे नंबर लगा लिया. So to appreciate that, we need to know the components of mobile network. Now that will make things more complicated, but since you have asked it, let me briefly explain that. There is mobile network can be divided mainly into two parts. The first part is called RAN, radio access network. That radio access network is what you see with your naked eyes. जो आपको बेस स्टेशन दिख रहा है आपको, मोबाइल टावर जो आपको दिख रहा है आपके घर के बगल में, that when you make a call, that mobile tower is receiving that signal and broadcasting that signal to desirable direction. That is what radio access network is. Radio access network से आप directly connected हो to the mobile network. But the part of network which is more important than RAN, which you do not know or you do not see, is called core network. Now what is core network? Core network again is proper servers. At these servers now, many of the mobile phone companies, they share their core network. At core network, आपका information stored है. आपने कौन सा subscription ले रखा है, वो stored है. आपका internet data कौन सा है, वो stored है. And because core network is also connected to the global internet, so using a mobile network, now you are part of internet also. And core network among all the mobile phone companies are shared. So that is how you can make a call from 4G to 5G or Jio to Airtel, because mobile phone companies share their core network. RAN will be different for all of that. Jio का tower अलग होगा, Airtel का tower अलग होगा. But जो core network होगा, that will be shared by mobile phone companies, right? So that is how mobile phone companies maintain a proper database of each and every user they have, what type of subscription plan they have taken, and that core network is also connected to the global internet. How the government can stop using bandwidth? Why would government do that? Why would government stop using bandwidth? गवर्नमेंट का पर्पस यही है कि कंपनी जो भी हम बैंडविड्थ एलोकेट कर रहे हैं उसको हम मैक्सिमम एफिशिएंसी पे कंपनीज यूज करें. सो व्हाई वुड गवर्नमेंट बी अ इनहिबिटर दैट? Why latency of video streaming is not minimized like other real-time data where latency is very low? Is there any loss to companies? Depends upon companies ने कितना इन्वेस्ट कर रखा है अपने पूरे नेटवर्क में to take care of the latency problem. recently G5 level geomagnetic storm and it was triggered by multiple coronal mass ejection. ये आपने पढ़ा होगा न्यूज़ में, अभी जस्ट लास्ट वीक का न्यूज़ है. It will affect communication system, navigation system. Will it be affecting some particular part of Earth or the whole Earth? Not the whole Earth, not necessarily the whole Earth, but whatever part of the Earth which is going to feel the burnt of that coronal mass ejection. But because Earth also rotates very rapidly, so many part of the Earth will be affected, but saying that the entire part of Earth will be equally affected, that will not be correct. But a larger part of Earth, yes, will be affected or was already affected. People witnessed aurora even in Ladakh. पढ़ा था आपने न्यूज़ में that people witnessed aurora even in Ladakh. Yes, VPN हम बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे. VPN क्या है? We are going to discuss that. Yes, you had a question. The purpose of network slicing is, the question is about network slicing, that even though the bandwidth is available, 4G में जो भी bandwidth था, 5G में government of India had said that okay, this much bandwidth is available. This frequency bands will be used by mobile phone companies. So even though the physical bandwidth which is available, in 4G also there was some bandwidth made available, in 5G also some bandwidth has been made available for mobile connectivity. But not all requirements require equal bandwidth. Not all requirements will have same bandwidth or same speed or same latency requirement. At some places, and that is what this slide was all about, at some places you require high bandwidth. You are watching, let's say for example, आप Netflix देख रहे हो, and that requires high bandwidth because you are streaming a video. You are driving a car, that is an autonomous car, that does not need a lot of bandwidth, but it does need this ultra low latency. Latency पे compromise ही नहीं कर सकते हम. That you need to have this very quick decision making in real time. Low energy, low bandwidth, ये जैसे एक IoT डिवाइस है, ये क्या है हम डिस्कस करेंगे अभी. बट इसको ना तो बैंडविड्थ ज़्यादा है, लेटेंसी का भी उतना प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, थोड़ा बहुत प्रॉब्लम, इट्स फाइन दैट इट डज नॉट रिक्वायर लॉट ऑफ बैंडविड्थ, इट कैन कॉम्प्रोमाइज अपॉन लेटेंसी ऑल्सो. AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, that will require ultra high bandwidth, not just high bandwidth, but very high bandwidth. So different type of requirements, different type of use case have different set of requirements. And all of them have to be supported by the same 5G network. So if we allocate similar bandwidth to all type of requirement, then this will not be the most efficient utilization. So we try to divide this network in a way that it can fulfill different set of requirements for different set of purposes. That is what network slicing is all about. Okay? Give the heading, applications of 5G. The same way we talked, the question is how does international communication happen? So the same way we follow certain protocols in a country, even at the global level companies follow a certain protocol. So if it is an ISD call, अब तो कोई ISD call करता नहीं है, WhatsApp आप use करते हो, ISD call कौन करेगा? इतना expensive call होगा. But let's say आप जो ISD call हम past में करते थे, that now global companies share the network at the global level. So जैसे इंडिया में core network share करेंगे Indian telecom companies, ऐसे ही companies are going to share their network at the global stage. There are places, there are literally physical locations where such type of network will be shared among, let's say there is a company in America called Verizon, there is a company in India called Jio, and they will share their network at specific locations, particularly to manage global calls. The same way internet works, for example. अब ऐसे समझ लो कि internet is this huge devices connected to each other. All of those devices have their own unique address and they're using optical fiber cables to maintain that connectivity. Okay? So companies at global level also, they follow a certain protocol and they do share their network. अब वैसे कोई करता नहीं ISD call. We can do that also. So the question is that can we do signal transfer through satellites? Yes, nobody is stopping you to do that. Lot of Starlink के बारे में भी हम discuss करेंगे आगे classes में. Starlink will be a great way to do that. So and that will be using satellite. So yes, that can also be done. Applications, high speed, low latency internet का क्या application होगा? So few things I'm simply going to make you the bullet points, write the bullet points. Write down in bullet points. Smart agriculture, smart agriculture, स्मार्ट एग्रीकल्चर, इसमें बस एक लाइन लिख लेना. फार्मिंग एप्लीकेशंस इंक्लूडिंग ड्रोन्स, रिमोट सेंसर्स. फार्मिंग एप्लीकेशंस इंक्लूडिंग ड्रोन्स, remote sensors, autonomous machines will benefit from 5G network. Next, in healthcare, telemedicine, remote monitoring for diagnostics and treatment, will be enabled by 5G. Third, similarly, in education, enhanced connectivity can enable remote learning experiences. Next application, but it is in itself a technology, IoT, Internet of Things. Internet of Things. अभी तक जो हम डे टू डे लाइफ में यूज़ करते हैं devices which are connected to internet, some local area connectivity, they are often mobile phones or laptops or iPads, tablets. But what if day-to-day devices start becoming connected to internet? And they already are. Like, think of all of the wearable devices. If you have a smartwatch, right? आपके पास Apple Watch है या कोई भी smart watch है, and that smart watch has a app for that in your mobile phone, and you can, whatever that smart watch is monitoring, any health data it is monitoring, you have a very good graphics available on that specific app here. That's a very good example of IoT device. So Internet of Things essentially is that when day-to-day devices start becoming connected to internet, right? Just say, I come here to take this class, and then I remember that मेरे घर का AC on रह गया. And as of now, maybe if there is nobody at home, then I know that I am simply going to incur a lot of electricity bill. It's not an environmentally sound practice also. So I know that there is a problem. But then I realize that my AC is a smart AC. It has a sensor. And I have an app here. That AC is connected to internet. I have an app. With help of this app, I can control this AC. And I will be able to switch off that AC from my mobile phone. Right? But even better than this will be that this AC has also, let's say for example, my room has a thermal sensor. There is a device which monitors infrared, and if, so for example, all of us emit infrared, I have told you that in previous classes, that all of us emit infrared, and my device has a programmed setting that if it does not receive any infrared in, let's say, for 10-15 minutes, then that is also connected to internet. That is connected to AC, and it sends a signal to AC that there is nobody in the room. You have to simply switch off. So IoT essentially is that when lot of devices are interconnected to each other with help of many sensors which are all the time collecting data about atmosphere, temperature, humidity, pressure, all of those things. And based on those sensors, they can now send a signal to some other devices which are also connected to internet, and we can use that for decision making. And by the way, it does not even require internet. Some devices can be done with help of Bluetooth also. I just need some sort of network connectivity which can connect devices. So internet की ज़रूरत नहीं है. Things can be connected even with help of Bluetooth. Right? I have, let's say, for example, uh, 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 there is a smart lock in my room which can be connected, which has a network connectivity with some infrared sensor, and it can automatically lock itself with help of that Bluetooth. So internet is not required, but what is required is a network which allows devices to communicate with each other, and that will help in decision making. So it's already becoming a very popular idea. Lot of light bulbs you will find on Amazon, and that light bulb will be an IoT device, and there will be an app in your mobile phone. आप light bulb का color change कर सकते हो, switch on, switch off कर सकते हो. But that light bulb is connected to your Alexa. You can give a command to Alexa, and that Alexa will execute all of that instruction on your behalf, because they both are connected to your Wi-Fi router. You are using the same network. For all of that decision making, you are not dependent upon some cloud server located very far away. That Wi-Fi router is acting as a edge device here, that because all of these devices are sharing the same network, they can send signal to each other. So this is not something which will happen. It is already happening. In many countries, developed nations, it's a very popular idea, but even in India, it is very popular. आप simply जाके Amazon पे जाके search करना smart LED bulb, and you will find lot of examples. What am I talking about? The wearable device, the Apple Watch or whatever smart watch you're wearing, that's an example of IoT device. So 5G का एक जो बहुत important use case ये है, that it enables those IoT devices to establish connectivity to each other. That we are now talking about a network connectivity which can handle many devices. Remember, 1 million devices per kilometer square. And depending upon requirement, it can divide network into many slices. So 5G has this immense application in IoT. In fact, the very first application I mentioned, drones and autonomous machines, and जो agriculture में हमने use किया था, that's a very good example of Internet of Things. That imagine in your field, in soil, there are sensors. Those sensors are measuring all the time the moisture level in the soil. And those sensors are programmed in a way that the moment moisture level drops a particular point, then it is connected to some irrigation system that is also connected to a 5G network connectivity. That irrigation system automatically gets switched on. It basically irrigates your field. And when that sensor monitors that enough water, it automatically switches off that irrigation field. So agriculture is also becoming smarter. So all of the very first example I made you right, that's a very good example of Internet of Things, application of Internet of Things. And again, I will repeat, this is not theoretical, it is actually already happening. So आप लिख सकते हो about IoT. It refers to interconnection of everyday objects to a network, such as internet, but even Bluetooth, allowing them to send and receive data. Allowing them to send and receive data. Allowing them to send and receive data. The capacity of larger number of connected devices. The capacity of larger number of connected devices will make 5G crucial for large scale IoT deployments. Will make 5G crucial for large scale, IoT deployments. Solve this question. वो तो हमने कर लिया था ना, क्वेश्चन 4 तो हमने किया था, क्वेश्चन 5. दिस विल नॉट बी आस्क्ड एनी मोर, ये अभी के लिए रिलेवेंट नहीं है. ये 2017 का क्वेश्चन है, 18 का क्वेश्चन है. 4 इट वाज इन न्यूज़ अलॉट. क्या होगा आंसर? नीदर 1 नॉट 2. LTE is commonly marketed as 3G, VoLTE is commonly marketed as advanced 3G. The answer will be 4G. So जो long term evolution है, that term is used for 4G network, not for 3G network. LTE is data only, VoLTE is voice only. Both are not correct. Both are both data and voice. The only difference is that LTE cannot package both of them together. And for when you are on a voice call, for data you need some other network, 2G or 3G network. VoLTE can package them together, and now it can travel through 4G network. Answer will be D here. Very large question. Answer is B here, Internet of Things. We do not even have to read the entire question. That alarm, smartphone rings in the morning, wake up, tap it to stop, causes your geyser to switch on automatically, all of those things. Basically, this is a description of Internet of Things, that many devices which are connected to each other. So I keep repeating this, that science and technology is one of the most scoring part, because the question asked by UPSC will not be very difficult, frankly. You have to just be simply aware about technologies and its possible applications without in fact going into nitty-gritties of things, and you will be able to answer questions. Let's take a break here. After that, we'll talk about some of the challenges, and then we will talk about some topics of computing. One more application we can talk about here is, and with help of this application, we can actually understand the technology itself. Augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. I will give you some time to settle down. So this will be, with help of 5G application, we can understand these three terms here. What do they mean? Augmented reality means that we are talking about enhancing our own environment with, let's say, for example, some virtual outlays. Jaise, to explain a lot of concepts, I show some YouTube videos or I show a PPT. Rather than doing that, what if I represent this space here, this empty space here, and I use it for some sort of digital overlay, some holographic projections, some digital 3D images here in this part of this space. That will be an example of augmented reality. So in augmented reality, the goal here is that we increase or we enhance the reality by imposing digital pictures or digital images on your physical environment. So we are very much we are very much aware about our surrounding, and we know what is happening. It's just that our surrounding has further improved, or our visual has further improved because of this particular digital projection. So this is called augmented reality. It has applications in many areas. For example, in education, it has some really interesting applications. In healthcare, it has applications. Doctors often can use human body's replica, and they can explain various parts of organs. So in medical sector, it can have applications. In many areas, we are using augmented reality. Virtual reality is very, very different. Virtual reality means that you completely get immersed into some virtual simulation with help of often some specific devices. Often you will require some headsets, and those with help of those headsets, you are now part of a virtual simulation. And often you are not even aware about what is happening in your real world. So you are completely immersed into some virtual simulation. And in that virtual simulation, often this occurred because of video games. Like a lot of people used virtual reality to play video games. But again, as of now, it has applications in many areas. The best example I can give you, that think of this class here. Right now, online students are watching this lecture in a live streamed manner. What if we can create a virtual space, a simulation, where all of us have those, again, virtual devices. All of those have that VR headset, virtual reality headset. We are sitting in our room. We are connected to a powerful network such as 5G. And all of us are part of a classroom. And that classroom in a virtual environment looks exactly like this. That I'm sitting here, you all are sitting in a virtual space on chair, and you can ask questions in a live manner then and there. So nobody has to come out of our house, and we can still have this lecture as if we are having this lecture right now. So this will be an example of virtual reality in education. Again, in healthcare, often VR is now being used to train young doctors who have to perform surgery, that they will first be given a virtual simulation, that in a virtual simulation there is a patient, and then you have to perform surgery on that virtual patient. That what will be the step by step, what you have to do. Right, so people are able to do that. People are using virtual simulation to immerse themselves into altogether a different area. Just there are virtual simulation apps available which allow you to go and feel like that you are in International Space Station, that you literally feel like an astronaut. And people become, by the way, sometimes so immersed that they actually start feeling that on Earth also they are feeling weightlessness. This does happen. So virtual reality requires a simulated environment, and you are part of that simulated environment, completely immersed into that environment, and you are not even aware about your surrounding. Mixed reality is a combination of both of that you are part of a simulation, but you still are part of the surrounding. You can interact with the physical environment around you. It's not that you have completely immersed yourself, but you still are part of a simulation also. That simulation, just say I can show you one of the best example of mixed reality will be Apple's Vision Pro. Apple का जो नया device है Vision Pro, so in this case, the person is able to move through these apps with help of blinking of eye only. You don't even have to move your hand, just with blinking your eye. So you're part of a simulation here. You can watch a video. Again, this is not actual screen. You're watching this because of this device Vision Pro. That is not an actual screen. You're watching a movie being immersed into some simulation. However, you still are aware about your surrounding. So you are not as such completely immersed into reality. This will be an example of what we call mixed reality. But all of those things to occur, you do require a powerful network with very high speed and low latency. So that is where 5G comes into place. You can write down few things here. Augmented reality is use of digital overlay in physical environment. Use of digital overlay on physical environment, which enhances the overall visual experiences, Virtual reality, write down, virtual reality allows a user to be completely immersed in a simulation, with help of devices such as headsets, and often no awareness about the surrounding. Mixed reality, third, mixed reality is a combination of both AR and VR. Where a user can be part of simulated environment. Mixed reality is combination of both AR and VR, where a user can be part of simulated environment, but still be aware about the surrounding. For all these technologies to work efficiently, 5G network can be helpful. 5G network can be helpful. 5G network can be helpful. There is a question here that why 5G service is not available on all mobile phones. दो कारण हो सकते हैं, या तो आप जिस एरिया में वहाँ पे 5G नेटवर्क ही नहीं है, या ये कारण हो सकता है कि 5G नेटवर्क है, companies have invested in 5G network, but your mobile phone is not compatible with 5G network. Compatibility here will mean, because remember all of the technologies I talked about, that your mobile phone should have sensors, should have receivers which can receive or transmit signal in high frequency, should have capability of maintaining signal with small cell stations. So all of those technology, जो technological upgradation है, that will also require changes in hardware. So just any mobile phone, any hardware working on any network, that of course is not going to be possible. So जो भी 5G network है, for that network you have to be compatible with that network, and for that the hardware you are using, in this case your mobile phone, has to be compatible with the network. However, there is a very good chance that all the new mobile phones you are going to buy, that will be compatible with 5G network. But the older mobile phones, they will not be compatible with 5G network. That is the most obvious reason. If you are in part where 5G network is available, but you are not getting it. But there is also a very good chance that 5G network is simply not available. Give the next heading, challenges associated with 5G. So in this topic, by the way, we did not just learn about 5G, we learned about various technologies like beamforming or edge computing or network slicing. And these technologies are not just being used in 5G, but in other areas. As a beamforming is being used in Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7 mein beamforming use hoga. Similarly, the network slicing hai, that is being now explored to be used in other type of network connectivity. Jo edge computing hai, that is being used in IoT infrastructure. So various technologies, they themselves are important, and you can expect a dedicated question on these technologies itself, that what they are or what type of applications they have. We try to understand about all of them with help of 5G here. Let's come to the challenges part. Now, few challenges which were challenges, but as of now are not. Chinese-led 5G. That was a challenge, and let me give you a brief background about this challenge. In 4G network, America was the leader. That all the 4G, particularly software and in some cases a lot of hardware, American companies, they became a net exporter, which contributed a lot to their economy, to their GDP, to their employment. But they became complacent. They thought that the benefits of 4G, they are going to reap those benefits for many more years. And that complacency was used by Chinese company. That when ITU announced that the next generation of 5G standards are here, International Telecommunication Union, immediately China announced that we have the technology to fulfill all of those things. And that led to a furor in America. All the American companies suddenly realized that whatever benefits we derived in last 10 years, now Chinese company will get the same benefits. One company particularly is important, Huawei. A Chinese company called Huawei that became a leader in 5G. And then they used their own lobbying power. They went to President Donald Trump that you have to do something about it. And then America used all of its weapon which has its disposal to ensure that Chinese 5G does not become popular, or countries do not actually import 5G from China. What did they do? There was initially a fear that Chinese 5G had security flaw. The Huawei-led devices, they have a security flaw. They're going to collect a lot of your data. That data will be sent to China. Even if that is true, how is it that different from America? Even America does the same thing, right? So that was a problem. Then second problem, countries said, well, the Huawei came out in the open, said that, look, this is our software, this is our hardware. We are not sharing data with Chinese Communist Party here. So that is a false allegation. And many European nations said that it's fine, we are fine with that. We will take care of our own security requirement. Then Donald Trump started threatening them that if you do not do this, then we will stop sharing intelligence with you. And of course, Europe is much more vulnerable to terrorist attacks. So that was a serious threat. A lot of people criticized America for that. Using national security to gain your economic interest does not make sense. Trade war ek alag cheez hai, but then using national security for that. But then COVID happened. And how China handled COVID. Everybody knows how COVID started. Like, we are just pretending that how it started, but yes, it did start from a lab. Like, there are really, really credible theories that that virus got free from a lab. The fact that coronavirus is perfectly suitable to stick itself to our receptor called ACE2. On our skin, there is a receptor called ACE2, ACE2. It perfectly fits to that ACE2 receptor, and it evolved naturally. That it's such a rare thing to happen. A lot of people believe, and literally there is a lab in Wuhan, which is called Wuhan Lab of Virology, where they do a lot of research on viruses. But China, any such attempt to demand even an iota of transparency from them, that how did this virus actually emerge, how did it spread, they shut down any such things. And countries which demanded China used all of that diplomatic power to ensure that such type of demands are completely shut down. So what type of regime China is, ऐसा नहीं है कि पहले से लोगों को पता नहीं है. A regime which is very opaque, a regime which does not care for such rights of individuals, right? Simply a dictatorial regime. We do not know a lot about, like, demanding accountability from a regime which is authoritarian. That does not happen. So what type of regime it is, that was known even before, but how COVID was handled, that made it very clear to many countries that a long-term collaboration on such an important project may be very difficult with a country like China. So many European countries, they thought that we are going to share technology with like-minded countries. Like-minded countries ka matlab ye hai that countries who are transparent, democratic, follow free market, all of those things. In this entire debate involving China, European countries and America, India remained silent for many years. India did not say anything that either we will allow Chinese-led 5G or not. But in 2021, we made it clear to China that we will not allow Chinese-led 5G. So that is why I started with that it was a challenge in the sense that we already have a huge trade deficit with China. And then even in 5G, that trade deficit will further widen. But it also led to awakening within Indian ecosystem that if China can become a leader in 5G, why can't India be? And few months ago, Department of Telecommunication, not few months ago, almost a year ago, Department of Telecommunication, which works under Ministry of Electronics and IT, they released a paper, white paper, and that white paper has a detailed step-by-step way forward that how India can become a leader in 6G. And it's not just about becoming leader, but we should be some important part of the entire value chain, rather than simply buying things or simply reacting to progress which is happening all across the world. So Department of Telecommunication has dedicated programs going on involving universities, involving private companies, that let's do 6G research in India, that maybe India will contribute to 6G technology in future. Whenever, and it will be again, next decade there will be 6G. People will shift to 6G. And India should be ready for that. So that is why I said that it was a challenge, but we have not adopted as a Chinese-led 5G. However, goes without saying that we still do import a lot of things from many other parts of the world. And some import is also happening from China, by the way. That is also there. The only thing is that a Chinese Huawei-led 5G devices, that we did not allow. Second challenge, which never is a challenge, but when you say a lie speaking, you speak it a number of times, it starts becoming truth. That 5G is causing cancer to human beings, or 5G is causing a number of problems to human beings. ये जो पूरा वो मूवी थी कौन पक्षीराज अक्षय कुमार वाली रजनीकांत वाली रोबो 2.0 that further fueled this, that a lot of birds are dying, human beings are suffering because of that. So two things, let's discuss both of this separately. That death of birds, there is no proof of that. That mobile phone radiation can cause death of birds. Many birds are dying, there is no denying that. And they are dying because of human beings, but they are dying because how we pollute water, how we pollute air, how we destroy forest. Because of all of that, many birds are dying. So there is no denying that birds are dying. ये बहुत clear होना चाहिए. And they are dying because of anthropogenic factors, human-led factors. That जितना ज़्यादा हम forest clear करेंगे, we are literally destroying habitat of many animals, including birds. We are polluting water, polluted water, drinking a number of times, birds are going to die because of that. We are polluting air. So, but mobile phone radiation is not one of the reasons. Mobile phone radiation, that is not killing bird. There is not a single proof for that. Right? There is in the very first class I talked about objectives of science, or how science aims to increase knowledge, enhance knowledge. One of the objectives is very clear for science or scientific method, is that let's try to distinguish between correlation and causality. I may have talked about this earlier, but let me explain this further. We use two words. In statistics, these two words are very popular. And in statistics, there is a very famous statement that correlation does not mean causation. And that statement is not limited to statistics. It is actually applicable to all aspects of our life. So what is correlation? Two events which happened in time, one event happened later compared to the first event. And because the second event happened later, you somehow thought that the second event happened because of the first event. So there was an event 1, event 2. This happened at earlier time, this happened at later time. So you attributed that event 2 happened because of event 1. There is a very good chance that maybe it is a causal factor, but a lot of times the things are simply correlated. Causality means where I can actually establish cause effect. I drop this pen, I hold this in my hand. So this is a causality, that the moment I drop this pen, I have my hand here. This event, I know cause, I know effect. So causality में cause and effect को establish करना बहुत clear है कि cause है उसका effect है. Correlation में क्या होगा? एक event बाद में हुआ, आपको मैंने ताबीज़ दे दिया कि जाओ आपका UPSC prelims हो जाएगा, और आप ताबीज़ लेके गए और आपका UPSC prelims हो गया, और सर ने बोला कि सर क्या साइंस टेक पढ़ा रहे हैं, सर तो ताबीज़ वाला बिजनेस यही करना चाहिए मुझे, राइट, कि ताबीज़ से प्रीलिम्स क्लियर हो गया, राइट. सो इट अकर्ड बिकॉज ऑफ योर ओन हार्ड वर्क, बट आई टुक क्रेडिट फॉर इट बिकॉज आई गेव यू दैट ताबीज़. दैट इज़ अ वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल ऑफ कॉरिलेशन. नाउ व्हाई वी नो दैट इट इज़ अ कॉरिलेशन, कि मैंने एक को दिया था, मैंने सबको देना शुरू कर दिया. कुछ लोगों का हुआ, बहुत सारे लोगों का नहीं हुआ. सो क्लियरली people who did not, maybe there was some luck factor, maybe you had not studied well. People who did clear it, you were fortunate enough. Some of your guesses, you got it correct, and you also did some hard work. But I took credit for that success. I did not say anything about all the other people who failed there. That's a very good example of correlation. And it's a very bad correlation, by the way. There are a lot of things where correlation is very strong, and still it is not causality. So that correlation is a cause of so many superstitions we have. That बिल्ली ने रास्ता काट दिया तो दिन खराब हो जाएगा, चप्पल उल्टा है तो लड़ाई हो जाएगी. All of those things. Now think about a cat minding its own business, a lazy animal. You are a drunk driver and you caused an accident. There are 999 other people जिनके साथ कुछ नहीं हुआ, and they will stay silent. But एक इंसान के साथ हुआ because that person was not a good driver, was drunk, whatever reason, maybe was unfortunate. But just before accident there was a cat. हो सकता है 2 दिन पहले भी बिल्ली ने रास्ता काटा हो, but will be attributed to that cat. So it's not a very good correlation, by the way. In some cases correlations are very strong, and still it is not causality. जैसे मान लो my weight is increasing, which is a fact, and I make a habit. I think that it is because of sugar consumption, maybe because of tea. So I make a habit that whenever I, let's say for example, I drink a cup of tea, I will go and jog for, let's say, 500 meters. And by doing that, I actually reduced my weight. And after 2 months, you ask me that, sir, आपका weight कम हो गया, आपने क्या करा? और मैं बोलूँ कि मैंने चाय पीना शुरू कर दिया. So that will be an example of correlation, that when I drank tea, I went for a jog, that led to weight reduction, but I attributed that to drinking tea. So some birds were found dead somewhere. Because of some n number of factors are there that birds can die, and you attributed that to mobile phone radiation. That's a very, again, another example of that why simply it's a correlation and there is no causal factor, and you also do not have any reasoning to explain that why birds will die from a radiation, which by the way is not that dangerous. So let's now come to the second part, that exposure to mobile phone radiation, can it cause problem to human beings? So mobile phone radiation जो है, that is an example of non-ionizing radiation, because remember, whatever frequency there is, it still is radio wave. And we are exposed to light about 18 hours a day. चाहे वो sunlight हो, चाहे artificial light हो, and light has much more high frequency, right? इस light का frequency बहुत ज़्यादा है, compared to radio frequency, जिसका frequency बहुत कम है. And frequency is proportional to energy. But it is not just about frequency. If I stop it here only, then that will not be entire truth. It is not just about frequency. It is also about power. It is about intensity. जैसे white light है, मान लो red light होता, कुछ भी नहीं होगा हमको. But a laser beam, which is of red light, can be made powerful enough that it can easily penetrate our skin. It can vaporize our skin. So frequency same है, but उसका intensity इतना ज़्यादा है that it can cut through metals also. So it is not just about frequency, it is also about power or intensity of a specific radiation. So mobile phone radiation, particularly जो fear है यहाँ पे, that जो beam forming है, we talked about that specific beam coming in a specific direction with lot of power. Can it cause damage to human beings? The logical answer is that it shouldn't. It shouldn't cause any damage because still it is radio wave. But science knows limitations of logic. Science accepts facts, science accepts experiment. Unfortunately, we do not have experimental data to confirm that if high frequency mobile phone radiation, even though it is radio wave, does it cause damage to human beings? I will repeat this. Logic directly tells you that it shouldn't. But can it cause? We do not know, frankly. Like, frankly, I'm telling you that there is not any scientific literature available which attributes any type of damage to high frequency mobile phone radiation. So all of the warnings which you come across, those warnings essentially are as a safety measure. That we do not understand it, let's try to be safe. But one thing should be very clear, that there is a base station. That base station is radiating frequency. If you are very close to the base station, like you're literally within 10 meter of that, then this intensity will be the highest. The moment you are even 100 meter away, that intensity will drop so much that it will not cause any problem. But if you are very close to a base station, like literally you are hugging the mobile phone tower for a very, very long duration, maybe for months and for years, and then maybe there will be some damage which we do not even know of, simply because we do not have any scientific literature available for that. But can there be damage? Maybe there can be damage. We do not know about that. But logic is telling us that there should not be any damage, because even though it is high frequency, remember high and low has no meaning unless we use a reference. So it is a high frequency in radio wave. And compared to that, light has many, many times high frequency, and we are exposed to light 18 hours a day. Only when we go to sleep, we switch off our light. So ये जो पूरा fear है 5G mobile phone radiation का, birds death का, this is just an exaggeration. Same thing, keep repeating. There is a fear that जो microwave में food गर्म करोगे तो somehow it can cause cancer. पढ़ा है आपने? मैंने पढ़ा है. मेरे father ने मेरे से पूछा था कि ऐसा होता है क्या? And I was like, कि ऐसा क्यों होगा? मतलब वो electromagnetic wave है. That electromagnetic wave, that is by the way microwave, and it is simply getting absorbed by the water in your food. And that water heats up, and because of that it heats up the entire food. It's as simple as when you put that pot of vegetable or pulse on a gas source. The difference is that in one case it is conduction or convection, in the other case it is absorption of radiation. That's it. But it is fundamentally a heating process. So why would heating process in a microwave oven will cause cancer? So all of this fear of mobile phone radiation, it is hugely exaggerated. And all of the measures which we talk about, that simply are precaution measures which we should take just in case. So you can write down few, but there are some other challenges. Write it down. That will be important. Yes. We can mention it, there is a possible fear. So the question is that in exam, can we talk about, so आप ऐसे लिख सकते हो that there is a perceivable fear because of high frequency mobile phone radiation, but more data needs to be confirmed. More data is required to confirm that. तो हम इस तरीके से हम लिखेंगे इसको, जो कि actually में सही है. You can write down few things here. 5G network is denser. Challenges में हम लिख रहे हैं. 5G network is denser. 5G network is denser because of short range limitations of millimeter waves, because of short range limitations of millimeter wave. This increases cost. As well as pose logistical challenges. This increases cost as well as poses logistical challenges. Second, millimeter waves are susceptible to blockages by buildings, rain. हमने लिखा था ऊपर, but फिर से लिख सकते हैं. Millimeter waves are susceptible to blockages by buildings, rain, in India, write down, in India, for hardware, there is a huge dependence on import. There is a huge dependence on import. Next, 5G could widen the digital divide. 5G could widen the digital divide. Digital divide. Particularly if rural areas are left behind. Particularly if rural areas are left behind. Rural areas are left behind. Let me explain digital divide further. Digital divide can occur because of lack of infrastructure. That 5G, जैसे जो companies होंगी Jio, Airtel, they have much more consumer base in metro cities such as Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, rather than in tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns, and particularly in rural areas. So even you will not find good 4G network in many rural areas, and then saying that good 5G network, that can be a challenge. So digital divide can be because of infrastructure itself, and that 5G can further increase the digital divide. It can also be, however, because of lack of awareness, that you are not keeping up to date with technological development. That also can lead to digital divide. I'm very sure you must have felt that with your parents, that you have to explain a lot of things, that how does it work. I feel digital divide with you, by the way, a lot of times. Like, I do not understand why would people use apps like Snapchat or anything else when you have WhatsApp available. So you get the idea. The digital divide can also be that if you're not able to adapt to technological progress which is happening. But essentially, most of the time, it is because of lack of infrastructure itself. Infra ही नहीं है तो फिर awareness का तो सवाल भी नहीं होता. Right on next point. There are ongoing debates about potential health impact. There are ongoing debates about potential health impact. Potential health impact of high frequency millimeter wave. High frequency millimeter wave. Although current scientific consensus is that it's safe within current exposure limits. It's safe within current exposure limits. One more point you can add here is 5G will allow huge flow of data. 5G will allow huge flow of data. Huge flow of data. And hence investing in data security. Investing in data security is paramount to ensure privacy. Is paramount to ensure privacy and misuse. To ensure privacy and prevent misuse. To ensure privacy and prevent misuse. मोबाइल फोन का there is a question about SAR value. देखा आपने? SAR value होता है. What is the full form of SAR? I'm asking is because मैं खुद भूल गया हूँ. So anyone will tell me what is the full form? I know the meaning. Just do a simple Google search. SAR mobile phone full form. SAR value is basically when you are talking to somebody on mobile phone. Then at the same time you are receiving lot of radio frequency band. Mobile phones are receiving radio frequency. and mobile specific absorption rate, right? जो specific absorption rate है, that essentially is a measure of how much energy you are receiving when you are talking to somebody for very long, then how much energy you are receiving because of all the radio frequency your mobile phone is receiving. So SAR value जो है, this measures that depending upon frequency, depending upon mobile phone hardware itself, how much energy you receive, let's say when you talk to somebody for a minute or for an hour. And SAR value then tells you that what is the safe level. So again, I will repeat this, that even if you do talk to somebody for hours, right? Naya love story, aise imagine karo. And then, even then, it is within safe limit only. So SAR value is just like some sort of an indicator that if it is a very high value, then you should ideally avoid talking for very long or using mobile phone for very long. एक जो clear fear है mobile phone का बहुत excessive use का, वो जो screen का जो presence है, that screen, that lighting all the time, that disrupts your sleep pattern, and that will cause headache or anxiety next day. That is a separate issue. That exposure to lot of light, because to have a good sound sleep, you should first, the first thing you should do is that remove all of that light in your room. And now what we do, we keep that light here. And you are basically exposed to that light for very long, and that actually disrupts your circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is like your body clock. Body is telling you to sleep, but you are disrupting that circadian rhythm by exposing your eyes to a lot of high frequency light. That's a separate issue, and yes, that is a problem, and that problem will have consequences. But even with high SAR value, as such, you do not have to fear a lot per se. There will be just an advisory that avoid talking for very long, so that if there is any type of adverse impact, you get to avoid that. That's fine. That's fine. It will help. Definitely it will help. Yeah. It will not harm. How does cell tapping work? ये कहाँ से अचानक आप call tapping पे कहाँ चले गए? Just have to have some hardware for that. That आपके there is a device which is basically creating an alternative network, and a nearby antenna can receive whatever is being talked here. So for that, however, some sort of tampering with your device is required. So call tapping जो है, for that some tampering is required. That tampering can be done with some software, often a malware, a virus basically, or it can also be some hardware, which is creating an alternative channel, and that channel goes back to some nearby antenna, and person who has access to that antenna will know whatever you are talking. So that is how call tapping works, but it will require some sort of tampering with device, whatever device you are using. It can be a tampering with malware, or it can also be some hardware which is tampering with your device. So this is about 5G and all of the technologies which we have discussed along with 5G. If you have any questions here, you can ask questions. We have some time. Give the next heading, supercomputers. There is a question here that a family got a network tower in their backyard for the economic benefits. It has been like 18 months, and now I see every family member wears sunglasses. I couldn't ask them the causality, that be rude. Can it be due to radiation we are talking about, or am I just attributing to correlation? I cannot comment on a very specific issue. That sunglasses particularly is very interesting, so I do not know. If just say in previous batches, people have asked me that there was a family there was a person who used to stay and wo pagal ho gaya. Then I have also, in some other batch, somebody told me that person suffered from some disease because of that. So ऐसे जो individual anecdotes हैं, उन पे comment करने का कोई मतलब नहीं है. That is not how scientific knowledge progresses. So unless I do not have specific information that what that might have occurred. जैसे अभी आपने रिसेंटली पढ़ा कोविशील्ड को लेके खतरा, पढ़ा आपने एक न्यूज़ में कि कोविशील्ड इज कॉजिंग ब्लड क्लॉटिंग. दैट इज अनदर वेरी गुड एग्जांपल ऑफ हाउ हेडलाइंस कैन बी मिसलीडिंग. जो हेडलाइंस है वो प्रॉब्लमेटिक है. दैट कोविशील्ड हैज़ रिस्क ऑफ ब्लड क्लॉटिंग. But that is not a new information. I was very surprised to know that why do people think, the only thing is that they have said that in some court and suddenly people think that it is a new information. That information was always part of their clinical trial. It was always available. And along with that, it was also available that because of COVID, there is 1,000 times more risk of blood clotting and heart attacks compared to because of the vaccine. That was also available. So scientific knowledge has to rely upon proper, just in particular in this case, in case of medicine or vaccine, it has to rely upon proper clinical trials, and all vaccines will have side effect. So this became a huge news on front pages that suddenly we have found all of that vaccine conspiracies that suddenly became very strong. But that was not any new information. So I will not be able to comment upon anecdotal things, that on a specific case what happened. We do not know. We simply go and ask them. I don't think that it will be rude to ask. Go and ask them that why are you wearing sunglasses? Has it to do something with the mobile phone tower which is in your backyard? Be a curious aspirant. So go and ask them. I don't think it will be rude enough. Anyways, give this heading supercomputers. A computer essentially does 4 things, right? Do not need to write it right now. A computer essentially does 4 things. Computer takes some input from you, processes that input. That is the most important part. That it is taking some input from you. So there are a lot of input devices which are part of your computer. The most famous one is this keyboard. So this keyboard is like an input device. But there can be many other input devices we use in our computers. So computer takes input from you, and based on the type of software you are using, it processes that information. Now that is the most important part. The same way when our eyes collect photons, or when our ears collect those air vibrations, and our brain can process that data and it allows you to look at things or listen to things. The same way, a computer, when it receives that input based on the programming which has been done in a specific software, it processes that data. That data processing is the most important part, and that is why the most important part of computer will be that CPU, central processing unit, which is called brain of the computer. But then this computer also will have its own hard drive where it is going to store that data, and it can give you output also, whatever output. Output can be that screen which you have, that output can be printer which is connected to your computer. So computer essentially does 4 things. It takes input, it does data processing, the most important part. It stores that data into its hard drive, and it gives you output. These are the 4 things a computer does. A supercomputer also does these things. But the data processing capability of supercomputer and the data storage capability of supercomputer is much, much more. And the way it does data processing is essentially very, very different from what our day-to-day life computer does. Our day-to-day life computer is very fast. जो mobile phones and laptops हम use कर रहे हैं, they're actually quite good at almost all of the things we want them to execute. But there will be a lot of tasks where they will completely fail. It is not just possible to have some type of data processing on these normal day-to-day computers, simply because they do not have enough capability both in terms of storage and in terms of processing. There are a lot of problems which require handling trillions of data simultaneously to make sense of what that data is telling you. And for that we require these powerful computers. We call them supercomputers. So supercomputers literally are embodiments of high performance computing. A computer which can handle huge amount of data, can process huge amount of data. Now how this is different, how that processing is different. So a supercomputer often will use what we call graphic processing unit. They will not use CPU. They will use something called GPU, graphic processing unit. And what a graphic processing unit does is, it does many parallel calculations together. Let me explain this. This computer is really good. Mobile phones working as a computer, they are really good. Whatever instructions you give them, they often execute those instructions one step at a time. And of course, that is very, very fast. But one instruction, then second instruction, then third instruction. So they execute one instruction at one point of time. This is called serial processing. A graphic processing unit, it does what we call parallel processing. It divides one problem into many smaller problems and work on many of those problems simultaneously so that it can give you output much, much more faster. Just imagine you have to buy monthly grocery for your family. You go to different shops, stand in different queues, buy things, pay money, come back. Going to take a lot of time. But you have a lot of friends in your colony. You are a popular guy, girl. And because of that, you bring all of your friends, you divide this entire grocery into like 4 or 5 smaller lists, go to a specific shop where everything can be found. All of them go to different shop, bought all of those things. You have collected all of those things, and your grocery shopping has been completed. So again, one problem, but you have divided that into many smaller problems, and you worked on all of those problems simultaneously, and you reduced your time here. So that is what supercomputer does, that it does parallel processing. It divides a problem into many smaller parts, and it does parallel processing. And because of that, it can now handle data. It can handle problems which are very, very complex, which cannot be done by our day-to-day life computers. Write it down. Supercomputers are extremely powerful computing machines. Supercomputers are, I will be talking about space-based internet. आप एक क्वेश्चन कितनी बार आपने बताया तो था, मैं स्टारलिंक के बारे में हम पढ़ेंगे. I will be talking about space-based internet. How do we use that in next class perhaps? Supercomputers are extremely powerful computing machines designed to handle complex calculations and simulations, designed to handle complex calculations and simulations at speeds far exceeding those of standard computers. Designed to handle complex calculations and simulations at speeds far exceeding those of standard computers. They often use dedicated hardwares such as graphic processing unit, which is capable of doing parallel calculations. You can write down one more line. Thus, while normal computers do things in distinct series of operations, called serial processing. A supercomputer divides a complicated problem into smaller parts, and work on many of those parts simultaneously. Work on many of those parts simultaneously. This is called parallel processing. A supercomputer's capacity a supercomputer's capacity is measured in flops, floating point operations per second, floating point operations per second, floating point operations per second, and generally supercomputers will have capability in petaflops, will have capability in petaflops. Peta का मतलब है 10 to the power 15 here. So you can think of one flop, one floating point, you can think of this as one problem. It has divided a complex problem, and one floating point you can think of this as one problem. And it has capacity into this quadrillion of flops. So it can now do calculation on quadrillion of floating points together. That is the meaning of flops here. So supercomputers are really, really fast, capable of doing certain things which is not at all possible with our day-to-day life computer. What are those things? We will discuss that in next class. Along with the next topic, which will take again one entire class, quantum technology. What does the word quantum technology mean?